Hello and welcome to the IVF Counsellor. My name is Gemma and I'm a counsellor, and I feel passionately that no woman should navigate the toll of IVF alone. It's an emotionally and physically demanding process and you need support, and this is what I'm here to offer. I have lived experience of going through IVF myself, so I know how hard it is, but that's blended with my expertise as a counsellor. Now this week I wanted to talk to you about the unexpected pregnancy announcements that you encounter when you're embarking on this journey. Now there's so many things about IVF that are out of your control, and other people getting pregnant around you is one of those things that you have absolutely no control over. But in my experience, they're one of the most painful things to deal with. But why are they one of the most painful things to deal with? Well, when you're faced with the possibility of not being able to have a baby, it happens at a time when you are surrounded by family, friends, colleagues, people of similar age to you who seemingly without any difficulty get pregnant. And you start off by thinking, okay, well, I'm happy for them, and isn't that lovely news? But as more and more people get pregnant around you and your journey along infertility continues, it starts to get more and more difficult to reconcile that in your head, that thought of, well, why are they getting pregnant, and why is this happening to me? And that can send you spiraling down. I would consider myself to be a pretty resilient person, but I might have been scrolling through my social media and unexpectedly a scam picture pops up, and that in a millisecond it had the power to take me tumbling down to this very dark place. I always almost imagined this wave of something that would just come over me, and before I knew what had happened, the wave had just gone over my head and had consumed me in these feelings of feeling that life was unfair, that it was unjust. I felt jealous and I felt angry about the situation. Now, I remember seeing one particular pregnancy announcement, and I think it's probably the worst one. It's the one that sticks in my memory. So we were very lucky. We had my daughter from our first round of IVF, but as soon as she was born, I remember feeling so thankful, so grateful, but I also had this feeling that I really wanted another child. I felt like, okay, I have this baby and I'm ever so grateful, but I'd really like to feel like my family is complete. Now, of course, I had her, and if we were then unable to have any more children, then I did have a baby, and that it kind of felt like if I could have another child, that would just be the cherry on top. And also I looked around at my friends who all had one child and had gone on to have one or two or three more. And, again, it was a given that they could have the family that they wanted. So why couldn't I complete my family? And I remember after having our daughter, we went back to have some IVF treatment, and we had 2 failed rounds. And there was a real lack of empathy from some of the people around us of like, well, you should be grateful, you've already got a baby. And of course I was grateful. But again, at the same time, I was a bit like, I don't think that I should have to justify myself, that I would just like to feel like I've completed my family. I would really like my daughter to have a sibling. And I felt a bit like I wanted to do everything I could so that I didn't look back at that time with any regrets, by thinking, well, if only we'd just carried on with treatment just to see whether we could have another child. That was the last thing I wanted. I didn't want regrets over the things that I hadn't done. So anyway, it was June 2018, we were due to have our round of IVF with our final 2 embryos in the July. My husband was away with work, so my daughter and I joined my parents to go and visit my aunt and uncle in Calgary in Canada. We went for the Calgary Stampede. It was amazing. My aunt and uncle looked after us. They took us everywhere. They showed us all the local gems. I felt like I was surrounded by so much love during that holiday, and it felt like a really good opportunity to enjoy myself, but also prepare myself for the month ahead that I knew was going to be challenging, because my husband was working overseas and I was about to embark on IVF on my own, so I knew that I really needed to be in a strong place to do that. And I remember just scrolling through my phone, and then a WhatsApp message came through, and it was my friend announcing the news of their second pregnancy, and they used the older sibling to say, you know, I'm going to be a big sister. And that message came through with no warning. The friend in particular knew that we'd already gone through 2 failed rounds of IVF to have a second child. And whilst on a very rational level, I knew that they were just really happy. They wanted to share their news, what joyful news to be able to share. And I would never want to think that people had to pussyfoot around me. But at the same time, it came through as an absolute bolt out of the blue. And I remember seeing my phone, and I remember just throwing it onto the bed like it was like this hot piece of burning coal. And the feeling that I felt, my stomach just went through the floor, because I'd already gone through the process of pregnancy announcements when we were trying to have a baby the first time round, and I just thought, oh, it's just happening again. And in that moment, I felt angry. I felt that things were unfair. I went into complete pity party mode. Why me? I felt really annoyed at my friend for being so insensitive. And I felt jealous, and I didn't feel happy for them. What I had done before I threw my phone on the bed was I quickly replied and I said congratulations. But if I'm being truthful, I didn't mean any of those words. All I felt was injustice. And when I look back at that, I feel absolutely terrible. But the feelings were there. And why were they there? Well, because IVF, when you can't have a baby, it's a really difficult process, and ultimately we're just human beings, aren't we? So if you find yourself in a space where you're having to deal with pregnancy announcements, and just like I described, that wave of emotion just hits you, I want you to consider these 4 things that I think might help you. So first of all, just allow the feelings to come without judgment. I think we're programmed to think that feelings like anger and jealousy are unpalatable, that we shouldn't be feeling them, that if we feel them, then that makes us a bad person. You are not the feeling. You know, you are feeling that feeling in response to a difficult situation. So then labeling yourself as a bad person, it's just not true. It's just a response to something that's difficult. That doesn't make you an inherently bad person to be feeling those difficult feelings. And in my experience, if you try and suppress those feelings and don't just allow them to come and understand why they're there, they'll just sit there simmering under the surface, and they will just come out despite your best efforts. The second thing is to set some boundaries on social media. Social media is absolutely great, isn't it? But it offers you a window into the world of, you know, hundreds of people that you wouldn't normally be in contact with. You wouldn't normally be in contact with somebody that you went to school with anymore, and you would have no idea that maybe they were having another baby. So giving yourself some boundaries around social media, limiting your access to it, or if you feel that if you're having a difficult day, perhaps thinking to yourself, looking at social media is not something I need to do today. And if you have apps on your phone, maybe just delete the apps off your phone for the day so they're not there for you to be tempted to look at. The third thing is around self-compassion. It's hard to be compassionate to ourselves when we're thinking we're a bad person because we're feeling jealous or angry towards others. But it's often a really helpful thing to think. The third thing is about self-compassion. It's hard sometimes to be compassionate to ourselves when we are in the midst of what we deem unpalatable feelings like jealousy or anger. But thinking to yourself, what would you say to a friend if you saw them going through the same thing? Or what would you say to a friend if they said, I feel like I'm a terrible person because I feel really jealous of my friend that's just got pregnant? Well, you wouldn't say to them that they're a bad person. You would remind them of the difficult journey that they're on and tell them what they do have and tell them what a great person they are, and just you would probably give them a hug. So can you develop a much more compassionate kind of self-dialogue? Because the moment we think that we're doing something bad, a very critical narrative can set in our head, can't it, about telling us that we're a bad person. Well, that critical voice has no place. It's all about compassion and being kind to yourself. Can you find that kind voice in your head to reassure you that nothing about you is bad? This is just a really difficult time you're going through. And the fourth thing is about trying to stay grounded in the present. So when I saw that message when I was in Canada, obviously the next month I knew I was going through IVF treatment. My head went spiraling as well into the future month, thinking about what if it doesn't work? What if, you know, we go through all of that? If I go through all that because my husband was away, what are we going to do? What if I'm still without a pregnancy? And that wasn't helpful for me to do, and I managed to pull myself back and keep myself grounded in the present moment. And I thought to myself, right, what have I got right now that I'm grateful for? I'm surrounded by my family, I'm in Canada, I'm having a great holiday. I also had spoken to my dad because he could tell after I'd seen the message, he could tell in an instant that something was wrong with me, and I spoke to him and he really listened to me and he validated how I was feeling. And that was so valuable, and you know what, I felt so grateful to have somebody like him in my life. So think about the present moment. Don't go off into spiraling into the future. Don't start thinking about all the upset of the past. What is happening right now in the current moment? And this is where gratitude comes in, isn't it? You know, trying to stay focused in the present moment and focused on what you do have and not what you don't have. Facing pregnancy announcements when you're struggling to have a baby is undoubtedly challenging. There's no way around that. But by focusing on the four things that I've talked about, which is acknowledging the feelings that you're feeling, putting some boundaries in place around social media, practicing some self-compassion, and focusing on the present moment and what's good in your life, could be really small steps that can help you to try and find some grounding and peace in this process. Please know that you're not alone in this. I am always here to support you. Reach out if you need my support, and I hope you found this video useful.